Fire is a necessity because I think it's a way nature cleanses itself. And they might say, well, that's craziness, but you know, fire creates a rebirth of the forest. You can see when we've had prescribed burns in this area and the underbrush is cleared out, and you can see the new green shoots coming up, and it's just lushly green, and the turkeys love it, and the deer, you can see them eating on the rebirth. Where if it's real thick, those tender plants, I guess you could say the shoots, they can't really get to because the sunlight can't get to them.
Since Big Cypress came into being less than 6,000 years ago, both lightning and human fires have flourished. Lightning started the work, and the torch of early humans added even more fire. Fire follows an ancient path along the borders of wet and dry, throwing its sparks into the wind, setting new fires. When fire reaches the soggy edges of sloughs and cypress domes, flames relax. Only those who could adapt to the ballet of wet, dry, and flame thrive. To live here and succeed, humans learn to be boss of fire. Now, thousands of years later, on every burn, there is someone in charge, the burn boss. To be a burn boss, one must have the rare mindset of persistence and patience, character and courage.
Today's objective is to knock back 75% of all the herbaceous and woody shrubs.
A burn boss burns for the objectives they want to accomplish. They must not only be the boss of fire, but a student of fire. To be the boss of a force that both destroys and creates is no small task. In conservation, there are few roles that carry so much risk and so much responsibility. In 1974, committed conservationists and public willpower helped the National Park Service find themselves in possession of a new national preserve. National preserves were something different than the iconic national parks like nearby Everglades.
But it's called a national preserve. And the reason for that is it's one of the few places where you have hunting and fishing. Most of the National Park Service control places that there's no hunting in it. And so it's a little different.
In the Big Cypress, the Park Service met woodlands and prairies with a cultural history, the impacts of water drainage, decades of grazing, logging, and human fire. Add in a complicated map of private land ownership, hunting knew no season. The locals pretty much did whatever they wanted. On swamp buggies, humans wandered deeper into the Big Cypress.
The whole idea of the race started years ago when hunting in the Everglades was fast becoming a popular sport. Transportation to and from the campsites was accomplished in something similar to the swamp buggies of today.
When I first started coming down here, there weren't any, the roads were wherever you wanted to go. So since then, they've limited access only to certain roads. You can't just drive across the prairie because it was tearing the prairie up.
With more people in the backcountry came more fire. And unlike seasonal lightning, people burn year-round.
Fire was something that they used to improve the nourishment of the animals. They'd start out early in the morning with the dogs, strike a trail over the deer, and the deer would be flying, running in ahead of them. And they'd hunt till 11, 12 o'clock. And then they'd try to gather and come back to camp. All of this was in walking, so going across some of these pine islands, my dad smoked quite a bit. And he'd light a cigarette and drop the match right into the dried out. By that time, by 11, 12 o'clock, it was dry enough to catch. They'd drop it on the pine island, surrounded by water, of course, in cypress, and walk on. And that would burn that little pine island off and leave everything else intact. But it would bring the deer and the turkey to that island to feed the next morning, because that's what they liked. They fed on the insects that were burned, evidently, and also within time, all the new grass that would come up that was tender and nourishing to them. So that's what they did, and they never suffered any real problem with burning because there was so much water here. I had been used to hunting as a boy in Gulf Hamlet, Florida, and even though it was wet up there, it was nothing what the water you had down here. So you were wading most of the time you were hunting.
1,068 fires occurred during the first decade of park management. Nearly all were human-caused. Sundays in March during turkey hunting season was an especially popular day for fires. When dry season deepens, plants like cabbage palms, myrtle oaks, and palmettos become increasingly explosive. If a hunter wanted to burn, there was little to stop them. Early park rangers had their hands full. Rangers played a game of whack-a-mole, responding to fires popping up across the vast preserve. The limestone, caprock, and mud took its toll on the equipment and the firefighters. It wasn't long before the National Park Service got their first swamp buggy for patrol and firefighting. Early on, the National Park Service learned from the locals. Controlled burning helped reduce the dead vegetation and prevented severe fires. Preserve staff began lighting prescribed fires in 1978, the very year the program started. But there would be much work to do. The land was vast, and the fire-loving locals easily avoided the rangers. They continued to set fires as they pleased, until the arrival of Eyes in the Sky. The Big Cypress was one of the first National Park Service units to own a helicopter in the lower 48. The helicopter proved priceless. Its Bambi water bucket could slow flames before the swamp buggies arrived. Airborne, the fire crew could see the bigger picture, observing the fire spread and helping direct the ground operations. In May 1981, the Turner 10 wildfire complex burned almost 170,000 acres of Big Cypress, making it, at that time, the largest fire in National Park Service history. In the 1980s, almost all the fires were human-caused wildfires. By the 90s, the number of human-caused wildfires was replaced by prescribed fire. The more the National Park Service burned with prescribed fire, the less wildfires affected the areas. Managers began to choose the conditions in which fire arrived in the Big Cypress with their planned burns.
We're so far back in here, it's difficult to say what had happened on the outskirts of the Big Cypress. But as management through the ranger station and everything enlarged and control came out more and more, not necessarily right after 74, but by the 80s or 90s. The Park Service had had a lot of experience, with burns like in Yellowstone and other parks. And so they invoked more control on the burning, but everybody adapted to it, understood it.
How did things change?
Well, the change happened that you don't drop a match anymore. But they have a phone message area, you call into it, and if the wind is not too high that day, or the ground too dry. Generally speaking, they've been very cooperative, really, in providing a permit for that day. They're only allowed to burn around your own property to protect your property. And that's the way it should be. Hopefully, why they get around your property every few years and they're able to burn and keep it kind of safe too.
Good morning, I'm the Burn Boss trainee, and Orlando is the Burn Boss. So this is the Kirby RX. The total unit's about 20,000 acres.
The same challenges to burn in the early days still exist today, but things have gotten even more complicated.
It's okay for Blake to leave some mosaics, some unburned patches of green, so we don't expect to burn the entire 20,000 acres.
Busy roads with a growing population and the urbanization of rural Florida add more challenges. To get the job done, thousands of acres require well-planned burns each year. The process works like this. The Burn Boss requests a burn permit from the Florida Forest Service. Fire staff print out maps and the approved burn plan for the day. The burn plan is the blueprint for the burn, the result of a detailed planning process. Setting fire is thoughtful work.
Yes, ma'am. This is Ecology with Big Cypress National Preserve. I'm calling to let you know we're going to conduct a prescribed burn today.
Division Alpha is going to be on tap 1.
You could have something perfect laid out and a panther dens in that prescribed fire unit, you know, and nothing you can do. Roll on to the next unit. I think that we're really unique in that the staff at Big Cypress are really attuned to fire's role in the ecosystem. We've built a culture within the preserve where the expectation is that we do burn and there is fire, and instead of asking why we're putting fire somewhere, the question is why aren't you putting it there?
Due to the remote nature and limited access to the preserve, aviation resources are essential to fire management operations. A machine attached to the helicopter like a saddle on a horse injects ping-pong-sized balls with propylene glycol. The balls ignite when they nest in grass and pine needle beds. Fire emerges with a tiny puff of flame. In coordination with the air operation, the crew lights and monitors fire and weather from the ground, mopping up any spots outside the planned burn area.
All resources on the Copeland RX standby for your 12 o'clock weather ops. Winds out of the south-southeast at 5, gust up to 10. Temp 89.89 up to RH 49.49, down 11. How copy?
Yeah, very well, copy.
Big Cypress National Preserve burns an average of 50 to 60,000 acres each year with prescribed fire. which is more than the rest of the National Park Service. This is one of the nation's most productive fire programs.
The in-holdings and the property owners certainly introduce a level of complexity that makes it somewhat unique among federal land management and fire, particularly the Park Service. We're trying to mitigate that through being proactive with prescribed fire. And yet at the same time, so many of those people are so educated on fire and have such a strong generational tie to fire that they get it, and they're also some of our biggest advocates.
A person like Jordan and his staff on there, we were great people when we talked. I think it was about a year ago they burned here, and all those people were just wonderful. That's got to stay in place.
We were burning around where we couldn't mow. The fire got warm enough and hot enough at this point to where it took advantage of the cabbage fronds that are dead, and it made a little whirlwind. And the whirlwind carried it up, and it just floated it over. And as it landed in this unmowed section, and at that time, a year ago, it was more dense than it is now because it burned off. And it caught fire. And before I knew it, it got away from me. And I fought it. I fought it and fought it. Finally, I said, I'm going to have a heart attack. I can't stop it. And so I called and notified the fire chief for the National Park Service. And he had a crew in here in an hour and was out.
You always start on the furthest edge out and work your way in, so that way we're not stepping on any evidence or anything, and you might miss something if you don't cover this area. You can see where the leaves are frozen. It's facing this way. If you look at the pine trees, it's facing this way. And then when we get down closer, you can see which side of the trees are burned and which side's not. So it shows that it backed into this area. So it was coming this way. So we're looking for all the indicators that show which way the fire flowed through the trees and the shrubs that will actually point us back in the direction of where the fire started. If this was lightning, we'll find a tree that was struck by lightning.
In the decades before the establishment of Big Cypress National Preserve, drainage disconnected the swamp from its historic northern Everglades headwaters. The Big Cypress watershed today is a rain-fed system. With drainage canals bleeding out surface water, rain is the only thing left.
As those roads were built and canals were built to drain the water parallel to the roads, that created a lot more land that was susceptible to fire. Both human and wildfires changed because there was more places for it to move.
US 41 is closed now and will be open and closed temporarily for the next few days as they work a brush fire in the Big Cypress. And the smoke and mixed fog, especially this morning, is affecting visibility. It was reported down to 0 earlier today, and conditions haven't lessened enough to allow the roadway to be open at this time.
On the driest and windiest days, some wildfires become huge. Help from the outside is called. In these incidents, the park will sign over delegation authority to an incident management team.
Some summary information about the incident. We're at 69,159 acres, 5% containment, 336 resources, and the cost is at approximately $7.06 million. Let's have another safe day. Thank you.
The more complex the fire, the more people called in for incident management, sometimes hundreds. Buggies descend into Big Cypress from all around Florida. Hotshot crews from out west. All kinds of heavy aircraft capable of dropping massive amounts of water on the fire.
Continued order want any more helicopters, and anything you have out there is good for fuel and return.
They also fight fire with fire.
One thing that's changed in around 2014, the Park Service and the other interior agencies said that you didn't need to go full suppression all the time on human-caused fires. We've kind of adapted our ethic within Big Cypress to really focus on firefighter safety when chasing any fires, whether they're human-caused or lightning-caused. Some of those fires have grown larger and taken up more days than they might have if we were still driving the swamp buggies out on the prairie and trying to drive around the perimeter of the fire. So I believe that's had a positive impact just by allowing there to be more fire, whatever the source on the landscape.
As I work my way in, then you look for the change, and direction is going to point you exactly back to it. Because fire, no matter what, always starts in the V. The grass is all the way back towards where the fire came from. So it looks like lightning struck one of the large cypress trees inside the dome here. You can see the fresh resin where the possible lightning strike came down and hit somewhere on this part of the tree, causing that piece to blow off and land clear over there. So I'm marking this is the point of origin with this pink flag. It can burn and just creep through here until it gets out into the grasses, and then when it hits the pines, then it just takes off when it gets good fuel.
Long before the National Park Service arrived, the first people of the Big Cypress were the original burn bosses. Native people, like people today, burned to increase forage for game, travel easier, sight game, and no doubt escaped campfires played their part.
People have inhabited the Big Cypress region for 10 or 12,000 years, all the way back into the Paleo-Indian. We have evidence of habitations on all different landforms within the Big Cypress region from the very beginning of it evolving as a landscape. We really start to see more intensive occupation of South Florida around the Archaic period as far back as 6,000 years, around the time that sea level became more stable and more of the water basins filled up and there was reliable sources of water. People were there at the very beginning. Fire definitely played an important role in the evolution of the landscape, and we have evidence of people using fire in the form of fire pits, cooking their food, burnt deer bone and charcoal layers that go down very far in our excavation units that suggest that from the time that people came into the Big Cypress region, they had the technology to use fire to their benefit. It's possible that they cleared areas and used fire to maintain open areas. We sometimes see evidence of that in our units. People of the Big Cypress region definitely hunted a lot of deer. There was a lot of benefit from hunting deer, from making bone tools, fishing toolkits out of the deer bone. Obviously the food and the hide could be used, could have been a really good trade item as well.
Native Americans had to hunt it. They had to know these same things, that they could bring game to a particular location by burning and doing it thoughtfully because they were living there. They didn't want to be burned up. And they were much smarter than people would let them be, you know.
It's important when we're looking at these beautiful natural areas to remember and to understand how important the human history is and how connected it was and how intertwined the two were. People influence the nature, nature influenced people.
As you get older, you enjoy some of that nature that you decide it's not really necessary for me to kill anything. And you enjoy just watching it and living within it. And I think that's the whole thing behind the preserve, is to allow the public to enjoy those same type of events.
That's a good boy. Let's go around over here. Over here, Hudson. Over here.
It was like a fairy tale. In the middle of nowhere, here's this clearing with the buildings and everything set up to function and run smoothly, and you've got wild animals coming in. I think I bonded with the place overnight. Now, I was a little skittish about snakes, but I'm to the point now where I'll go out in my bare feet and take the dog out, but it took me a while to get that way. It feels to me like this is my home. We're custodians. This is just temporary. Somebody will be here after us, and I hope it's the same or better.
Humans have an ancient connection with fire, domesticating flame for a variety of purposes. Human use of fire slowly transformed from open burning shaped by ancient wisdom and necessity to our modern fires contained in combustion engines and electronics. Here, in the Big Cypress, people kept the torch lit from the beginning until today. People who choose to live in flammable landscapes with fire-adapted species do best when they understand the importance and challenges of fire management. This understanding may allow burn bosses to do the work needed to maintain this vibrant ecosystem.
Joe Garrett will tell you the stories, the old days, that the rangers would police this place on buggies. So they always let the rangers or whoever it was, and Joe could tell you their names, stay at their camps. They had an old propane refrigerator back there, and so the officer came in one night and he was going to light it up because he had something he had to keep cold, and he kept sticking his hand back in there with the match to light the pilot, and it kept getting blown out. He kept, what the world's going on? So he got a flashlight and shine, and then there was a rattlesnake back there, and every time he stick his hand, he'd go like that, and it'd blow out the match.